It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. We have State Representative Dan Sullivan is in studio. Dan, how are you, sir?
Good. Always glad to be here, Paul.
It's always glad to have you, sir. So we do these things every 2 years, the impression of the session. And so what, State Representative Dan Sullivan, what was your impression of the session 2019?
Well, Paul, I was disappointed this year. You know, we had several big issues up, and we'll talk about them here in a few minutes. But, you know, we pass a lot, and we move through a lot of things. But the big issues that come up, and I think you're going to bring them up here in a second, you know, our gas taxes, our highway bill, those kind of issues were the key issues. And all of them moved through rather quickly without much dissent or much opportunity to discuss other options. You know, for example, the highway bills is a good one. You know, most people don't know there were 3 or 4 different bills out there that would have funded the highways equally. The governor's bill passed without much dissent. There were a few of us that held out for other bills, but you come out looking like you're against highway funding, when really there were at least three bills out there, 3 good ones out there, that would have funded the highways without a highway tax increase and the accompanying gas tax increase and the accompanying constitutional amendment to increase the tax.
Wow. Yeah, you're exactly right. There were other options out there. And I was just telling during the break what I was attempting to do here. I took the 3, what I think are the 3 worst bills of the session, and HJR 1018 to continue the levy on the 1/2 cent sales tax. Right. So they didn't want the sales tax to sunset, so they put that on the ballot. Then we have SB 576 to reform the tax laws concerning the levy collection. And this was the internet sales tax.
Of course, that was combined with a tax cut, but actually the tax cut doesn't take effect for 5 to 7 years.
And it's a tax cut only with people with C corporations. So
yes.
it's very little people.
And, you know, that's kind of what's disappointing in those, is that we combine those two. Makes it hard to vote against an internet sales tax, because you really do want to help our local businesses. I understand the impact this has to our local businesses, but until we stand up against that idea of combining taxes, vote those standing separately, we'll continue to have the same kind of problem.
And then the last bill was the gas tax. Yeah, so I was trying to cross-reference how many of you guys in the House, Republicans, voted no on all 3 of those, and the list comes up with 12 names, and you're one of those names. So first of all, thank you for voting no. I know some of those no votes were hard because they would put good things in them, like you were just saying.
Absolutely, and you know, it's difficult when we don't have an opportunity to debate the other options. You know, Julie Mayberry had a bill that would have taken the taxes out of current highway-related products and put all of those taxes into funding highways. As a matter of fact, it came up several years ago, and it was a good bill that didn't get through. But those are some of the other ideas that are out there to fund our highways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really, really good stuff. So when it's all said and done, my question has been, are people going to be paying more, less, or the same? As the net tax burden, or is the tax burden going to be increased, lowered, or stay the same?
Well, you know, I think that'll be spun, or there'll be different spin on how that works. You know, there'll be people that take this select group of bills and say, well, my package of bills actually reduces taxes over tax increases. But then when you combine all of the tax increases that we got with the tax cuts that we got, I think we're going to be paying more in the long run. We'll see. But I think certainly the governor's package that he proposed that would come out, I think he mentioned he had 3 or 4 bills there that overall that would be a tax decrease. That may be true, but we also had the cell phone tax. You know, we had a number of other taxes that came up that. So when the taxpayer looks at what they pay versus what a platform position was by any particular politician, you know, we're probably going to end up paying more.
I think you're right. As a matter of fact, I've looked at the preliminary numbers that we've been calculating here at Conduit News, and especially if you look in the first fiscal year, second fiscal year, you know, it it looks like it's. I don't even know how you could argue it any other way. When you combine everything that's being done, I think the people are going to be paying more money, and that's the unfortunate thing, because we already pay so much. We pay a lot in taxes, Dan. You know this.
Yeah, and Paul, the important thing, or one important thing to me, is that we have an opportunity to debate the options in front of the people. As you know, and I imagine most of your listeners know, most of these issues, the deal is cut before it comes before the committee, that most of the people know how they're going to vote. The discussion is behind the scenes, happening sometimes months ahead of when the bills actually run. And the opportunity to debate all the options, again, like the highway bill, the opportunity to debate that is not there unless you kill the bill that's on the floor. Or cause them to rewrite it. In order to do that, you have to have 24, 25, maybe 51 votes to do that. And it's very hard in the House to come up with enough votes of the same mind to be able to have other bills brought up and other bills discussed. Of course, the Senate is where the real power is. It doesn't take long down there. This is my third term. I'm very thankful to be a member of the House of Representatives and to represent the District 53 where I am. But the real power there is in the Senate. You have to have 5 or 6 senators can really change the dynamic and change what the debate is. So, maybe one day we'll be back in here talking about opportunities in the Senate.
Yeah, well, I've obviously heard the rumors, and I saw the Michael Wickline tweet. So, let's stick to the impression of the session for now.
Sure.
We've got a lot more interviews, I'm sure, to come. Arkansas work requirement in the middle of this session. State Representative Dan Sullivan struck down by a federal judge. And what were your thoughts on that?
Well, again, we had another bill. Josh Miller had a bill out there for us to discuss, and what those options were and opportunities were. That didn't happen. We didn't have an opportunity to discuss those. I'll be working on some information in the interim here. I just wonder, I'd like to see, and I'll be working with the Bureau of Legislative Research, what were our original projections in 2013 when this started? What were the enrollment projections? What were the cost projections? What were the other issues that came up that cost the state money that are not in those projections? The administrative cost. We had, I think, a $200,000 cost in software and computer programs. We had in 2018, we had people who were living in, or 2017, we had people living in other states that I think about 12 to 15,000 people that we paid $600 a month for, who lived in other states, didn't even live in Arkansas. So we had associated losses with that. And I'm going to pull together, and I'll come on the show when we have that, but in 2013 to 2023, so our past, our present, and our projections going forward. But we don't have an opportunity to bring that out publicly there on the floor and let the people see what that debate is. But Josh Miller's bill would have taken us to a new position and a way to at least examine what the savings might be if we went back to a fee-for-service type model.
Yeah, that was, and we interviewed Josh on that. It was a shame that we had Democrats who, were voting to keep the corporate welfare side of things, which is what we've got right now, giving Blue Cross Blue Shield all that money. And at this point, it's less expensive, it looks like, to go and actually just fee for service.
Yeah, exactly. And let's just see the numbers. It's much like if you're the CEO of a company and your company has a loss, a revenue stream coming, you want to see your business plan. Just show me what our business has done with the revenue stream. What were our projections? What was reality? What is it currently? And what do we look like in the future? And I think the public needs to see that. I came real close to calling for a committee of the whole, which would have been up for the legislature to come back in the interim and just look at those numbers. But we just didn't have the energy at the end of the session to pull that off. And I'll jump to a different subject here. I don't want to forget it. I think a big change that you're going to see. We changed the House rules. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes.
It was the last day, and I was really encouraged by that. You know, I was disappointed, as were a lot of others, in the committee selection process, and I voted for it. It was a bad vote on my part. I wish I hadn't done
You
that.
mean 2 years ago?
2 years ago, right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think Speaker Shepard did a good job. He was fair. He was equitable in how he distributed people and letting people have their choice. But our new rules selection process will let members of the House pick their committees based on their seniority,
yes,
which I think is a much fairer way to do that. You know, the people of my district have certain areas that are important to them. You know, we have a large farming community, of course, in my district. They want me to be on agri. Others want them to be on, you know, city, county, local, where their local events are. So I think it's really an important change that we came about. So my impression of the session, if there are good things that came about, one good thing I'm really pleased with is the new rules we set in place to set committees going forward.
Yeah, I was there for that debate, and I think it's good. I think the only real power that the speaker maintains is if the Democrats, or let's say if the minority party somehow gets to stack a committee and they get a majority, the speaker can step in and remove as many as 2 and put them somewhere else, to where the Republicans would, or the majority party would, in this case Republicans, would still control that committee.
Right, and that's an important part.
I agree.
You know, and coming in the future, you may see more closer ratios. Right now, I think it's 74-26. You may see a 49-51 ratio at some point. So, you know, it's important that the party in power maintain control of as many committees as possible. But you know, also the way the committee process works, you know, when we started this session out, 2 big issues that are not on your list there was school choice and some of these scope of practice issues. I was very disappointed, and we didn't get hardly any of the scope of practice issues out for the medical community. You know, our medical lobby is one of the most powerful lobbies in the state, and we hardly got any of those scope of practice bills out of public health. But with the makeup of the committee, there was just about no way that was going to come out.
There was
no way. And the same thing with school choice. The people that were on the education committee had already demonstrated that they were not going to vote for school choice.
Yeah.
So I think when the committee started, we had maybe 7 or 8 people that had voted for school choice on that committee. And of course, when the vote came up for school choice in committee,
only 7 yes
it turned
votes.
out with 7 yes.
You had an interesting moment where there was we made the YouTube video of it. Education bureaucrat at the end of the table. I think he's the head of the school board association, or superintendents or something. And you got him to admit that he believes the government is a better arbiter than the family when it comes to making choices for them.
You know, he doesn't believe that, but that's what he said.
That's what he said. And he didn't want to, he was like, I don't want to answer your question in that way. Well, that's how I'm asking the question, you said. It was really, really good moment, I thought.
Yeah, you know, Paul, I want to read something real quickly here, if I might. You know, this happens all the time. This is a quote by Jefferson. Jefferson says, and I quote, "I know no safe depository of the ultimate powers of society but the people themselves. And if we think them not enlightened enough to exercise their control with a wholesome discretion, the remedy is not to take it from them, but to inform their discretion by education. This is the true corrective of abuses of constitutional power." You know, one of the things I'm disappointed in, especially I was on the education committee, we tend to take power away from local school boards. And we will have people come and they'll say, well, we're having local trouble with this, and we're having local trouble with that. So we come down here, we want you to correct it at a state level. And I try to continually ask that question. Why are you not going to your local school board with this? Why? Well, they won't do it. Well, if they won't do it, the corrective is not to come to the state. But as Jefferson says, the corrective is to educate your community, get the votes together to remove those school board members, or put the pressure on those school board members to do what's right constitutionally. And we have a real tendency in the House and in the Senate and in Little Rock that people bring their problems to Little Rock thinking we'll solve their local problem. And unfortunately, we do. And what that does,
Solve.
yeah, unfortunately we do. But what that does is the people in our local communities think they don't have to get involved. I don't have to run for school board. I don't have to get engaged. All I have to do is go down to Little Rock, pass a law, pay a lobbyist, and we can lobby and get it changed statewide. And it's really disappointing and sometimes discouraging to see our state legislature taking power away from local school boards, from local city councils. And we've got to do everything we can to put the power back there and educate the people in our communities about what's right.
Yeah.
One of the encouraging things I saw this session is grassroots involvement. You know, you saw the Patriots of 746.
Yes.
We had really good, if you look at the issues, the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that's kind of how I break these laws down. What's coming up life-wise? Well, in regards to life, we had several good pieces of legislation on life. In regards to liberty, the freedom of people to choose, we lost big time, you know, in the scope of practice and opportunities for people to have a choice in what they do and who they see.
I mean, it was, if I had to hear, and you know, if I have to hear State Representative Lee Johnson remind everybody that he's an ER doctor on that committee one more time, I heard so many times from him, well, I'm a doctor. There's no way he was letting anything, he was not going to vote for anything that was going to give folks more choice, in terms of scope of practice.
Well, when you talk with the medical lobby about at what point do people have a choice, that's not what it's about. When you listen to the testimony, this is about market share, clear and simple. It's about who gets the money, who gets the market share, and they don't want to share that. Mm-hmm. You know, when you look at the issues of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, you know, again, our Second Amendment bills came up real strong in that. You know, we did a real good job in those kinds of issues. So, you know, I hope your listeners, when they listen to legislation, will continue to gauge how their legislators are doing on those life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness bills and issues. And when they look at their scorecards that are coming out, how'd you do on life? And, you know, most of our Republicans are pretty strong there.
Oh, yeah, definitely, except for Dan Douglas.
Yeah. You know, Dan's a really good guy. I got to know Dan much more than I had in the past, and I really appreciate Dan's perspective. We vote differently on a lot of issues, but Dan's a thoughtful guy, and I know you enjoy playing his clips on there.
Oh,
I enjoy listening to him.
I do. He's a
thoughtful guy, and you know, in the Agri Committee on those issues. You know, I talked to Dan this week earlier, asking for his advice on what were going on with raising cattle, what's going on in the farming community, and Dan's got a really good perspective that I appreciate. It's one of those things that you get to know people, but you can still disagree with them.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I certainly respect the Dan's way of trying to get a bill passed. It's very unique and it's effective a lot of the time.
You know, again, a lot of the passing of a bill is not done down there on the floor. The passing of a bill is done behind the scenes.
But again, I disagree with this. I disagree with his policies.
Yeah, and the lobbying is just incredible on some of these issues.
Yeah. We're talking with State Representative Dan Sullivan. It's his impression of the session. He's gone through some of the bad and some of the positives, and I really do appreciate you coming on. I will come back to the tax issue just real quick, briefly, because I feel like from an economic freedom standpoint, if we're taking more money from the people, which I think we are.
That's pursuit of happiness.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, how can you pursue happiness when the government is continually taking away your wealth and your money?
Yeah. So when I cross-reference these names, I just want to remind you, you talked about the power being in the Senate. I cross-reference these names in the House. How many state representatives voted consistently no on the three bills, the three tax increase bills, internet tax, gas tax, half-cent sales tax? There's very few of you, like 12 names. You can't even do it in the Senate. You try to do this with Republicans in the Senate, there's not one Republican that appears on that no all three times.
Well, that's what I look forward to coming
design.
back on. I look forward to coming back in a couple of weeks and making an announcement.
Okay, all right.
That's where it lies.
State Representative Dan Sullivan, always great to have you on, sir.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Paul.
it. All right, folks, we're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere. Back in a minute.